what you do when you're not feeling it. Like when
Mm.
you aren't feeling patient and you aren't feeling kind and
Do you know, I was
you know.
just thinking like when you're not feeling well and you still got to show up. My husband talks about this a lot in a senior position as he's in. He's got a lot of people in the directorate under him looking to him for reassurance and the to be the flag bearer and the driver of the vibe and the culture. And he's often said how it feels like he can't show any cracks, and he's got to, even when he's struggling with, yeah, really difficult situation that he's trying to manage in one part of the team or one part of the business, and he doesn't feel well, and he's struggling with his own stuff, and somehow having to show up and do this really complex work under incredibly intense pressure externally as well as internally. And many predecessors have gone off with very serious health conditions or worse, and he's always said he refuses to be a statistic in that way, but having to learn how to juggle that and somehow still put a happy face on it, but still be authentic, because I think his people really value him not being a cookie cutter senior manager, that he is different, he is himself, and he gives people space to be themselves. But I know he finds it actually a lot harder than it looks. He makes it look really easy, and I know the toll that it takes on him. And I
Mhm.
was just thinking about that a little while ago. Just like sometimes you really do just feel like crap, and it's really hard to be patient because you're in pain, or you didn't get any sleep again, or you didn't,
Or your
you're
hormonal.
worried about stuff
Mm.
in your life. And yeah, how do you show
Or
up
it's
and be present for other people?
or it's hour 13 of A-level results day. And that's my time when I really struggle. I lost my temper once in that last 45 minutes. I was nearly made it. And then I lost my temper. Um,
Mm.
I find it really difficult because we talk so much about being consistent, and that you don't, everyone does things their own way and you've got to have your own style, but trying to be consistent with other people and knowing that with different personalities in your team, for example, it can take a little bit more effort maybe to kind of have certain conversations with certain colleagues or to work with certain team members. And then when you're feeling less patient and um you're not feeling fully with it, those things that are they can be a lot harder, and it can be harder to be, when I say consistent, I mean sort of, like how you treat people, so, and how knowing
Yeah.
where you are. And there are times where I just want to be this is a really weird analogy, but I just was thinking, but in the musical Jesus Christ Superstar, there's this bit where everyone's fussing. I realize it's also a Bible story, but he just yells at them, like, heal yourselves. And there are times where I just want to turn around to my team and I'm just like, parent yourselves, people. And I can't. So I feel Fiona's going to have wisdom for us, Kelly.
No pressure.
No, no
I
pressure.
so I had my 5-year business anniversary. I took myself away for a little 3-day retreat and went back through all of the um like kind of created a series of field notes of the common things that I see in coaching with individuals and also in teams. And I think this is kind of one of the leadership thresholds. It's like the being the adult in the room and doing it consistently, but also giving yourself permission to take the consistency to a level of character rather than actually a level of behavior per se. Which means then I think it's okay if you're feeling crappy to not be like, but I have to always be on, and to actually, with people where it's appropriate, sort of close team, to just go, do you know what, I actually feel quite crappy. And so I'm going to take a bit more of a back seat. Can you lead this meeting? Can you, do this or that or whatever? And where it's really more about acting from principles and character and being consistent in how you show up in sort of representing yourself with integrity, respecting others, those kinds of
Mm.
principles, rather than I always lead the team meeting, I always do this, I always do this, I always do this, if you see what I mean. So the consistency is more in how you're approaching things rather than actually what you're doing, which I think then gives you a bit of scope to move things around when you're not feeling great. I also think it does let people see that you're human, because, like, people have
Mm.
full lives. You can't just turn up at work as a robot. And I don't know about you, but the leaders I've respected most are not the ones who paint on a happy face all the time. They're the ones who are real within boundaries, and who behind closed doors will be like, yeah, actually it is crappy, or yeah, my mum is in hospital and I need to leave early today to go and, take dad to the
Mm.
hospital, or whatever it is. It's those moments of humanity that make us really connect best, and sort of trust people around us, as long as it's held and it's not spewed all over everybody as a sort of trauma dumping. So I think there's
Mm.
a moment of finding your center in that, and not being toxic positive and not trauma dumping. And there's the bit in the middle about being boundaried enough to take care of your own needs outside of work, so that you can show up as you need to in work, but also letting yourself share some of that load with trusted colleagues, and kind of leaning on
Mm.
team at that level.
You've made me think that one of the strategies I've often deployed, because I struggle with anxiety, I build in mechanisms to manage that. So I know that there are times when my anxiety is very high, where I have certain things I'd struggle with, and like performing at the front in leading from the front is quite difficult at some of those times. So I try and build, just thinking about it, I've sort of done it unconsciously on other things, but like build frameworks around stuff like team meetings and structures, so that the others, obviously team members, get opportunities to lead and opportunities to take to develop themselves in those safer spaces, but also so I don't have to be on all the time, like to build in some safe space for myself. Like when I became the acting admissions manager, like my first big sort of team management role, and had to run clearing out my, I was so ill, I was so stressed with my anxiety, and it was the training, and the manager before had always just led all the training, and I was just like, no, development opportunity, guys. And actually, I've built a lot of that in. I joke that my goal with the manager is to kind of not be needed, like to build some of that self-sufficiency and things in the team and everything. But actually, that helps me protect myself as well, because I'm not the go-to. I partly do it for them, but partly do it for myself, I think.
Yeah, and I think, in the last episode where we were talking about workload and things, like those roles where they're sort of student facing, and you might have a particularly challenging student interaction where it's helpful if you can build in capacity to let somebody walk away for a bit. I think that so echoes across to senior leaders. Like, it's so difficult when senior leaders have back-to-back meetings and you're walking out of hearing a like very intense HR panel, maybe a grievance or a disciplinary, something like that. You're supposed to be chairing that, and then you're into leading the health and safety committee, and then you're out of that, and then you're into like what we're going to do about this restructure, and then you're out of that and into, just think you've got to have some time to decompress in between all of that. Otherwise, how can we expect people to run from meeting to meeting like that and not have space to decompress?
Or even just
We
to
do.
gather
I
their
know we do,
thoughts.
but
Yeah, but you're a lot more productive if you've had 10 minutes to gather your thoughts and work out
yeah,
what you need to get out of this meeting, or what you need to say, what you need other people to take away, what decision you need them to make, and not just, yeah, surviving, crashing through the door, spilling your tea, figuratively, or in my case, usual, actually.
Yeah, and then
But yeah, just stumbling from one thing to another, and trying to switch,
yeah,
focus, you know, that it diminishes the effectiveness of your cognitive ability
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
You'll get sharper, more well considered decisions if people have had a chance to actually think them through.
But also, you have to be different people in different places.
Hmm.
I don't, in the sense of what you described, Fiona, like if you have to be the the regulator in, say, an HR setting, and like be very like following the rules and be very controlled about it. But then you might go into health and safety, and it's just like everyone, other people lead on that, and you're just there to mediate. You know, you'll kind of have different roles in different spaces, and that kind of code switching is quite, yeah, is difficult to do instantaneously, and can compromise your strategy and the way you might go about doing something if you're still in like, I say, you've had a really like tense debate with another maybe peer or a manager, you know, about something quite fraught, and then you walk into something where you need to be quite sensitive, or there's some caution needed around interpersonal relations or whatever. Yeah, you need the moment between the two. I do try when I'm, especially with the virtual meetings, to schedule them for like 50 minutes and everything, and try and be kind of strict about that. But it's a terrible habit that we fit into, and it's ridiculous working from home. I'm literally like, I'm desperate for something to eat. I'm desperate for a wee. I'm desperate for a drink, and like that's just there. But I'm like the because there's no, well, we've got to walk between buildings anymore. Um, there's a bit of a different shift on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Strategy then is the key, isn't it? To like think about um more of having a, like you said, not having like performing a certain role, or like pushing yourself to a certain intensity that is not necessarily sustainable. You need to find your kind of authentic middle space that you can comfortably, you know, like level up a little bit, or drop down if you're really struggling, but it's enables you to keep that consistency.
yeah.
I
I
like
also
that
think
consistency
there's,
of character.
yeah, I also think there's something here about a significant point of development for people who are sort of stepping up out of those kind of middly managery type roles into more leadership roles is acknowledging that actually in those more senior levels, you're not actually paid for what you do. You're paid for how you show up and what you contribute. And knowing that then often gives you permission to take the time that you need to do the preparation so that you can show up in the appropriate way with the resonance that's required for whatever the task or the meeting or the whatever it is versus where it's like, how many widgets can you produce in an hour? Like, it doesn't really matter what mood you're in, you're just like producing widgets. Da, 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 da. That's no longer true for people who are very senior, actually. It is about how you're showing up in those spaces. And so, therefore, it needs to come with permission to take the time that you need to gather yourself and be able to show up appropriately.
Mm. Wise words.
Indeed.
Cool.
You know your stuff here.
Thanks.
Cheers
We've
to that
we
then.
indeed. See you next time, guys. Thanks for joining.
See you next time.